Welcome back. In this video, we're going to create a component that uses multiple useState hooks. The motivation for that is that when you use multiple useState hooks, it reveals some of the details of how the React engine is actually dealing with hooks behind the curtain. The component itself that we'll build will keep track of a list of tasks that you have to do, and ones that you've already completed. A task list is one of those first hello world type of apps that you build in almost any framework or language to really learn how to create in a new technology. It helps you gauge the compactness or verbosity of a language syntax, so it'll be nice to see how React Hooks is able to achieve this functionality with concise but readable code. All right, let's start by creating a tasks.js file in the source directory. So create a new file, capital T, tasks.js. Then import React and the useState hook from the React module, so import it from React. Then we're going to set up the tasks function component, and we're also going to export this right away while we're here. Now in this component, there are going to be three pieces of state to keep track of. We need one to keep track of what the user is typing into the input field, to keep track of a new task. So let's set up a hook for a task text value in the state. So we're going to say that we're going to destructure one, the task text, and then two, the set task text function from a useState hook, in which we're going to apply a blank string as the initial value for the task text. The next piece is the array of tasks that the user has already built up. So let's say that we now have a second piece of state, which is building an array of tasks. We have the setter function, which is going to be set tasks. We're going to call useState as the actual hook, and the initial value for this is going to be an empty array. And the final piece is an array of completed tasks. This is created when the user decides that they've crossed off a task in the list and completed it. So we're going to have a third piece of state. This one is going to build an array of completed tasks. It also has a setter function. This time it'll be called set completed tasks. Likewise, it's going to be a useState hook that initializes itself to be an empty array. So overall, we now have three pieces of state, each keeping track of a different piece for the overall component. Now, one question you might have is, why create multiple separate useState hooks when you could merge them all together like this? So for example, we could have one object with the task text, the tasks, as well as the completed tasks. And then we could have one setter for the overall state. For example, something like set task state. Now, the reason that we're actually using multiple useState hooks and not one giant one is that the update to React hooks has changed how React internally handles updates to objects within state. Previously, in the land of class components and calling this.setState, what would happen is that React would merge your new values into the existing state object. If there were keys whose values had not changed, there would be no need to replace the existing values at those keys. But now these setter functions replace the entire underlying value under the hood within the React engine. So if you had an object with all these pieces of state within it, you would essentially be replacing the entire state on every single update with a setter function. You might as well have your pieces split up into multiple hooks, so that way the replacements are isolated to only the variables that you want to update. Furthermore, another reason to have this split up is that it's more conducive to refactoring. The separation allows you to extract functionality in the future into custom hooks that can be reused for new components that need similar data when you create them. Okay, let's go ahead and return the actual JSX for the component. Its inner content is going to be an overall div, where the top element is a header 3 element with the content of tasks. Next, let's set up an input and a button where the user can add a task. We already have an example of this with the search functionality within the app.js file. So real quick, I'm going to go to app.js, and you'll notice that there's a div with a class name of form with an input and a button. So we're going to set up very much the same thing. Let's have an overall div with the class name of form. Since that index.css file is ready to stylize this, we're going to have an input field that can be self-enclosing, and the value for this is going to be the task text. On a change of this, let's call a function that we're going to create right after called update task text. And then we'll have our button. The text for this is going to say add task. And on a click of this, we're also going to call a function that we'll create in the future called add task. Cool. So first, let's take care of this update task method. Above the return statement, let's declare update task text and set it equal to a function that has an event parameter. After all, the input is going to have an event provided by React. The result is that we'll call set task text and then pass in the event.target.value. Cool. Now we also have the add task function. This should eventually call set tasks. So the idea is that we want to add a new task object to the existing tasks array. So let's call add task. We'll set it equal to an empty arrow function, and this will call set tasks. Now, we don't want to modify the existing tasks array, so we don't want to do something like task.push, which modifies the existing tasks array. Instead, we want to provide an entirely new array to the React engine, so that way it has a new value to do its replacement with. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a new array that consists of everything within the current tasks array. By using the ... spread operator, we can get all the current items within this array and then apply them one at a time within this array itself. And now we can add the new task text as the final value within this hard-coded array. Nice. Finally, before the return of this JSX, let's add a console.log of the tasks. So that way we can see if our add task method as well as the update task method is working as well. All right. This is a pretty good point to check out the functionality of the component, but we still need to include it within the overall app. So once you have all of this code, head back to app.js and then import the new tasks component. So import tasks from /task.js. And then below, let's actually make the tasks appear after the Joe component. So make a new horizontal ruler for separation and then have the tasks JSX. All right, go ahead and start up the app in your command line if you need to. Then visit the application at localhost 3000 in your browser. Give it a refresh for good measure, and you should see the new task component appearing. Very cool. As you type into the input, you're going to find that you get a log every time, since setting the state of the task text causes a re-render, which recalls a task component function and then hits our log that we have set up. Now, when clicking the Add Task button, you should find that the task array now includes the task text. Neat. And you can have as many of these as you like. So we can add the task there, and now the task array has grown. Cool. So let's actually make a div that renders each of these tasks within the array. Back in task.js, below the div for the form, we're going to make a div with the class name of task list. So that class name is task-list. And the reason is that the index.css file is ready to stylize a div with this class name. And now we're going to map over the task JSX. So let's call task.map. And then we're going to create some JSX one task at a time. Let's return a div for now. And then the inner content of this is going to be the task itself. Very cool. Now, since we're generating a list within the JSX, React will need a key applied to each task. So we could make the key the actual task itself, but this wouldn't be truly unique if the user were to create tasks with identical text. So the proper approach here is to generate a relevant ID for each task. To do so, head back to the command line and we're going to install a module called uid. This has the ability to generate unique IDs whenever you call its relevant functions. So back in the home directory for the project, install uuid at version 3.3.2, which is the version used in this course. And then go ahead and use the -- save flag so that way it's listed as a dependency in the dependencies section. All right, cool. As that's installing in the background, head back to the task.js file. At the top, let's import the uuid function. So import uuid from this new uuid module, and we're going to go to a separate module at v4. The version 4 uuid function generates a function that is partly based on the timestamp, as well as some randomly generated numbers to pretty much guarantee a unique value. So now whenever we add a task, instead of only adding the task text, we're actually going to add a whole object. It's going to consist of the task text itself, but now also an ID that is the result of calling this uid function that we imported. All right, and the effect is that every single task is going to have an ID as an actual object now. So this affects our map function. Instead, let's just structure the ID as well as the task text from the task item. The key is going to be that ID, and then what we'll display is a task text itself. All right, go ahead and save that. And once you have all the changes, head back to the command line and restart your project since we killed it in order to install the module. And now back in the application on the browser. If all goes well, you should see the application restart as it did before. Let's go ahead and add some tasks. All right. How about do homework? And what you should see is that indeed the tasks are being displayed. Very cool. And each task itself is going to have that randomly generated UUID applied to its object. Nice. So with that, we've taken care of adding tasks. What's remaining is a functionality that allows you to complete the tasks and send a task to the completed task list that we have in the state with the final useState hook. Let's take care of that next. Hey, if you're enjoying this content, be sure to head to the full course at udemy.com/reacthooks tutorial. Since you're coming from YouTube, I'm giving you access to the course at the max discount Udemy lets me create. I've posted details in the video description, and be sure to visit my website at davidtkatz.com as well, where you can find links to connect with me. All right, see you in the next one.